The Season 2 finale of Severance is well and truly upon us, and with only just under a week to go until we potentially get some answers about what the season's been building towards, there's now even more to theorise about. With Dylan resigning, Helly being confronted by Jame Eagan, Mr. Milchick potentially changing sides, and Mark and Harmony looking like they could well be devising a plan on how Mark could rescue his wife, the finale of the show has all of the makings of something that will live long in the memory. In this video, I'm not going to be trying to predict how the season's going to end, because I definitely don't have the screenwriting ability to do that. But what I am going to do is try and predict the direction that the episode could go in, and the individual stories that we could see developing. So with that, let's dive into the video and I'll give my theories and predictions on what I think could happen next. Here is Severance Season 2 Episode 10 Theories Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Mark and Harmony's plan. During the closing moments of episode 9, we saw that Mark and Harmony Cobel came face to face for the first time in a long while, and it seemed like Harmony was about to share all of the information about Cold Harbor, her actual connection to Lumon, and the fact that she created the severance procedure. Something that will be interesting to see, because as we heard outie Mark say, up until this point Harmony hadn't shared anything with him. It seems like Mark isn't necessarily fully reintegrated yet, as he doesn't seem to remember all of his innie's memories, and his innie doesn't seem to hold all of his outie's memories either. So I'm guessing that Harmony will be able to share an insight into what the next steps are going to be like for Mark, and the state that his mind will enter as the reintegration process advances. After all, he is now in the safest hands possible. During their conversation, I feel like we're going to see Mark truly learning about Lumon's dark history and what the company's end goal is. Not only with Cold Harbor, but also with the rollout of all of their other technology across multiple areas of people's lives, such as the birthing cabin and also the transformation of the workforce. So it seems like Lumon's goal is to tackle all aspects of people's lives. It's currently got birth and also work. Other key components of life I'd probably say are school, which they've got too with the Myrtle Eagan School for Girls and the indoctrination process that they implement. And then I'd say other pillars of life are love and death. So with Cold Harbor seeming like it's going to be centered around Gemma dying and its heavy connection to Mark and the emotions that he feels potentially because he's in love with the subject, I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to be revealed as. I do think though, Harmony will only be assisting Mark if she gets some kind of gain herself, as I don't think she's actually doing it out of the goodness of her heart. With her not being able to get into Lumon because she'll be spotted and maybe her card might have even been disabled by now, she may want Mark to do something which could lead Lumon to collapse, or at least for Jame Eagan to be compromised. The whole thing about Jame Eagan having these women that are his that he takes to the birthing cabin, it's something that's extremely odd, and I wonder if Harmony is going to be able to utilize that against him and get him removed from his position. It's something that I imagine the board wouldn't take lightly to if their CEO was tarnished with bad press, especially with a momentous day on the horizon. The board are pretty much like this omniscient force, and they probably know of everything Harmony has contributed to the company. So I wonder if Lumon doesn't suffer a collapse, then Harmony might be fishing to ascend the position of CEO when it does become vacant, and it could be a twist that she's not quite changed 100%. But she could just be done with the Eagans being the ones that are in charge. With it seeming like the completion of Cold Harbor would mean that Gemma will end up dying, I think that Harmony will advise Mark that when he does return to the severed floor that he shouldn't complete the remaining 4%. However, I think that will end up with Mark having eyes watching over him closely, as we know that there's always people looking through the screen, and it will ultimately draw more attention to him. Lumon are relying on the completion of the project, so I imagine they'll do all that they can to get the remaining few pieces completed. I also think Mark's mind is going to be torn in this episode. Torn in the sense that Mark knows that he needs to rescue Gemma. However, I imagine he could well be put in a predicament where if he saves Gemma, it most likely means that he won't be able to see Helly again. If Gemma is saved, then there's not a chance that Mark would go back to working at Lumon, which would mean that Mark would no longer exist. And it would also mean that the person that he shared vessels with and cared for, Helly, is somebody that he'd never see again. So I think it's going to be a bit like a catch-22 situation and a double-edged sword for him. Save the wife of his outie and lose the person that he loves, or don't save the wife of his outie and be with the person that he cares about. This could ultimately end up leading to a frosty Innie and outie relationship like what we've seen with Dylan and his outie. One other element that might come into Mark's plan is that I'm questioning what side Mr. Milchick is going to be on, and if he'll end up assisting Mark. We know that in the past he mentioned that he was going to be tightening the leash and keeping a watchful eye over the employees. However, with MDR pretty much being non-existent now, and Mr. Milchick also standing up to the bully, which was Mr. Drummond, I wonder if his loyalties are going to switch. Despite being a high up at Lumon, he doesn't seem to have suffered the same indoctrination or feel as much of a devoted follower of Kia. So I do question if he's going to be pushing for the completion of Cold Harbor, or if he'll be assisting in the rescue. We saw a real human side behind Mr. Milchick in episode 9 when Mark spoke to him and said work was just work, so I'm hoping we'll see that again. Dylan and Gretchen. With Dylan resigning in the most recent episode, it's something that unless his outie agrees to allow it to happen, he won't be able to step away from his existence. Dylan basically did this because he was unhappy with the life that he was leading, because he got a taste of what it could be like to have an actual life on the outside through him forming a relationship with Gretchen. This ties back to what Miss Huang said in episode 5, where she said to Mr. Milchick that he shouldn't make them feel like people. And now Dylan has had a taste of what it's like to not just be a corporate slave and exist only to work. But now that he got to experience actual emotions and somebody that he cared for, he wasn't satisfied with just existing on the severed floor, hence why he wanted to end things. I actually think Dylan's arc has the potential to get a whole lot darker, and I think this because I don't reckon outie Dylan is going to agree to the resignation. I say this because outie Dylan doesn't really have any ambition or anything that he's passionate about when it comes to work. And we saw how he struggled to get a job on the outside, especially with the way that people that are severed can be viewed by other companies and employers on the outside. So even though outie Dylan is a bit insecure about his wife and her actions, I don't think he'll go along with it, which could mean that any Dylan will be stuck in a cycle of living a life that he doesn't want to live, and not truly being able to escape it, only holding on to the memories of happiness that he had with Gretchen. Or another direction that I think his arc could go in is that Gretchen could have a change of heart and realize that she's happier with Dylan, and they could conspire to utilize the overtime contingency protocol, which would allow Dylan to be able to have full control on the outside. Something that would mean that Dylan and Gretchen would be able to be together. So it would be more of a positive story for Dylan, but one which would have dark undertones and he'd be putting the outie in the dark. Again, throwing the question out there on which life is more valuable, an innie or an outie. Helly and Jame. In the closing moments of the episode, Jame approached Helly when she was in MDR, and he said, "You tricked me, my Helly." In my main video where I broke down the episode, I listed several different theories on what I felt it could mean. But in this video, I'll share the one that I think is most likely to be the case. I think this scene will be developed further, and we'll see Jame referring to the season 1 finale where Helly was in OTC mode and she spoke with Jame on the outside before she got on stage, which is why he could be referring to her tricking him, because at the time he thought it was Helena. I think this could spark a conversation between Helly and Jame about the life that she feels she deserves to live and wants to live, and essentially express her views on the lack of rights for an innie, the trapped nature, and that she felt she was used when his daughter took over her form and utilized the Glasgow block and pretended to be her. Again, leaning into one of the overarching themes of the season, which Helly has been at the heart of, which has been focused on the value of the life of an innie. Jame doesn't know that Helly has the directions to the exports hallway, so I imagine from there, or maybe even the next day when Mark goes back to work, she'll use the directions with him so that they can both make their way to the testing floor together with the hopes of finding Gemma. There are so many different directions that the finale could go in, and in true Severance style like in season 1, I imagine we're going to get a huge cliffhanger that will do everything it can to leave us wanting more. It was a unique style with the way that season 1 ended, and I imagine they're going to do the same here. On Apple TV Plus's platform, they haven't given much away at all on what could happen, so they're keeping the cards really close to their chest. So I'm both looking forward to watching it and also not, because it'll mean that it's going to be over, and we'll probably have to wait a few years again. So, there you have it, Severance Season 2 Episode 10, Theories Explained. If you want to see more videos on Severance Season 2 being broken down, then click on the card in the top corner, there'll be a playlist there. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.